Welcome back to Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat. Join the team at Wildfire Marine as they install brand new trim tabs and rub rail on the 25-foot Mako project.
Again, we're on Brian's 25 Mako. Things are coming along good. Everything's painted, the bracket's on. Most of the interior work is done. One of the things we're going to do is put, Brian wanted was trim tabs. Kind of surprising to see a boat this old without them by now. This has such a deep V that, you know, once you get a couple of people on a boat, somebody walks one side or the other, the boat usually lifts without the tabs. So we ordered a set of the bolt trim tabs, and with the fact that we have this bracket, we went ahead and ordered the bolts with the trailing edge, which has a very low mounting point. We did run into a problem though. The dead rise had two different planes on it, in the extent to where the tab was going to ride. So I went ahead and called Bennett to see what they thought about installing. And they recommended we push the tabs in as far as we could until we reached the notch on the lift straight. When we go ahead and find a location of our, where we're going to mount the tabs, they want you to keep the leading edge of the tab has to be about a 1/4 inch up from the bottom of the hull. And the trailing edge, depending on how long your tab is, they want 3/4 of an inch at the trailing edge. So the easiest way I found to do that is take this piece of wood, put a boat stand underneath the boat, tied up against the hull. Now I can go ahead and put a piece of 1/4 inch plywood up against the transom, set the bracket on it, and then put a 3/4 inch piece at the trailing edge of the tab and let it rest on there. And that gives me all the dimensions that I need to have. We go ahead and we drill our pilot holes for the tab itself, then mark all the holes, drill them all out, put sealant on everything, go ahead and run the screws in on the tab. Then we find a location for the height of the trim tab hinge. And by doing that, we have our block set up so that we're at the proper height. We go ahead and we mark it. I drill a couple of pilot holes again. I'll take the template that they gave us, set them at the pilot hole, and drill the remaining holes for it. Then we go ahead and seal it. Go ahead and run our wire through the transom, and then we move up to the inside of the boat where we go and do the installation for the trim tab indicator. I turned most of that job over to my wife, Debbie. She's our wiring specialist here. She doesn't like to drill holes, so I'll go ahead and drill the holes in the dashboard for it. And then she'll take it from there and get the boat all wired up.
He cuts the holes in the boat, I don't. So once the wire came through, I put the plug on there, and then I took their extension, and I have a pull string that will go through the tube up into the console. I plugged it in, I pulled the wires up through, and then I plugged everything in, and everything worked fantastic.
As usual, with most of these boats, when we close in a transom, you have to fill in the rub rail section in between the old rub rail. Taco made a white rub rail that fit his description, so we went ahead and ordered that up. The main part of the rub rail is a rigid vinyl rub rail. It comes in 20-foot sections. We went ahead and took some measurements, and then went ahead and started what we normally do. On one side, we left enough to go back to fold back to the center, and that gave us a layout where we had our joints that were very far away from each other, so there was nothing to detract from the rub rail itself. Wrapping the corner, it's always a little bit of a challenge. This boat was a little more so because it is basically almost square corners. So we heated it and cut out this piece of starboard that fit the gap inside the center of the rub rail. This allowed me to heat it up enough to wrap it nice and tight and not lose its shape. Then we had to go back and heat the top and bottom edge just to shape them so that they fit in tighter to the hull and got rid of the buckle. And then because it's a rigid rub rail, it carries itself pretty well. So we'll go ahead and go about 5 or 6 feet and put another screw in, and then go another 5 or 6 feet. And we kind of let the boat determine the rub rail position. The reason we don't go every screw is because if you start to follow either the top edge of the cap or the body line on the hull itself, you'll find that most boats, they don't match perfectly all the way around. So we do it this way, and then you can go back and eyeball it, and you can follow a nice fluid area, and then we'll fill in the middles of those with screws, and then you're pretty much set. You can go ahead and fill in all the rest of the holes after that. The biggest problem was the insert. It's an excellent insert, but it's extremely stiff. We found the best way to put that in was to do sections at a time. We went ahead and we laid out 15 or 20 feet of it or so, and I clipped it to the rub rail with some spring clips. And then I would heat about 10, 12 inches at a time, just to soften it enough where I could go ahead and make it pliable, where I could just push it in with a putty knife. But everything went in very well. And actually, it is an excellent rub rail. The insert actually sticks out almost 3/4 of an inch, which the insert is going to take almost all of the abuse, which is a whole lot less expensive than changing the entire rub rail. We're trying to meet this deadline, but certain things are kind of pushing it further and further away. So we're going to keep going and see what we can get done.